You've started your business, you're working hard, you're showing up. So, why does it feel like you're running in place? In this episode, we're going to talk about 5 reasons your small business might be staying small, and none of them are about effort. I'm Burnett King, the founder of Noble Crown Fragrances, a company dedicated to elevating your space through the power of scent. The Noble Crown podcast is here to talk about the business of building a product-based brand with lessons learned that help you reach your goals faster and better understand the industry. If you're watching on YouTube, please take a moment to subscribe. It helps the channel grow and keeps you connected to future episodes. In today's episode, we're discussing 5 reasons why your small business is staying small. Here's the hint. The ceiling isn't the market. Most of the time, it's the decisions you're not making. So we're going to break down each reason and give you some examples and then also talk about how to solve them. So the first one is you're not listening to your sales data, right? You need to lean into what's actually selling. So your sales data is the most honest feedback you'll ever get. It doesn't have feelings. It doesn't have an agenda. It just tells you the truth. So I take this as an example from my business, right? We sell a lot of different products. We sell candles, perfumes. We used to sell wax melts, room sprays, reed diffusers, and they all come in various scents. Now, obviously, because I have so many SKUs, not all of them sell well, right? So obviously I have to evaluate every SKU and decide whether or not to keep them going forward. And so I have to come up with a time period of evaluation, right? I have to have enough sales data to know whether or not those products are selling. I typically won't remove a product right away just because it's not selling. I have to give it some time. But then I also have to see how it fits into the mix of a product category, right? And sometimes you have to get rid of entire product categories, and that's a different evaluation time period. I'm way more willing to keep trying at a product category because sometimes your marketing isn't right, or sometimes it's not, you just haven't given enough time to make a decision on whether or not to keep a product category. And it's much harder to get rid of the investment and time that those involve. But individual SKUs are a lot easier to remove. And so what I want you to do is look at your top 3 selling products or services right now. And then are you investing your time and marketing energy into those? Or are you trying to push things that aren't moving, right? So if your sales data is telling you, hey, these are your top products over here, but you're spending all of your time over here, that leads to, your business not growing. That leads to focusing on the wrong products, your customers, right? And assuming these are your ideal customers, you know who they are, they're spending money, but they're spending them on this set of products, and you're focusing all your time and energy on these set of products. That's a mismatch, right? And that leads to slow growth or no growth, or, you're actually wasting money on the wrong thing. So as founders, we sometimes have attachment to products or services that aren't selling, and that's an emotional decision, not a business decision. And you really need to sit down objectively and do this, right? So the way that I try to do this is to dedicate some time. Like I'll block off a couple hours on my calendar, pour through the sales data, right? And I usually have a mission in mind. So I'll look at one category. Let's just take candles, for example. I'll look at candles. I'll look at the trailing 90-day sales, right? So that's a quarter. Typically I look at trailing 365 days, right? A trailing year, because I've been in business long enough to look at that data, and that helps get rid of some seasonality. But I'll look at a specific time period and I'll just look at the sales. I'll look at them in different channels, right? So if I'm selling in direct, so, online through my website, or if I'm selling through wholesale, and then I'll look at total sales. And you just need to analyze it a couple different ways, and you'll quickly start to see which items are continuously fall to the bottom, right? So sometimes there's a weirdness going on, right? Sometimes things won't sell directly, but they sell great in wholesale, or they'll sell great at a store or in markets. And then other times it's consistent. You just see the same products at the bottom of your list every time. And those are the products that you want to get rid of. So more importantly, you want to double down on your winners before trying to revive your losers. So even if you are, just super attached to these products that aren't selling, I would say try shifting your energy to your winners, and that will gradually change your mindset, right? Because you will start focusing your energy and your time and your money on those winners. And then you'll quickly realize whether or not those losers are really worth the time investment or not. Your customers are already voting with their wallets. The question is, are you listening? So reason number 2, you're not pricing for growth. Your prices are too low to scale a business. So we have a whole episode on pricing. You should check it out. But low prices feel safe, right? You may be a new founder. You might be starting a new business and they feel like a competitive advantage. You want to be lower priced than your competitors. You're focused on what they're doing. But if your margins don't support paid marketing, inventory growth, or hiring for help, you're not building a business. You're just building a job, right? You're building a job that is, you're just burning through all your time, energy, and money to not make any money. You're just, you're neutral. And we all get stuck in this, and pricing is a big piece of it. And so underpricing is not really humility. You're not saying, oh, I'm a better option because I'm a lower price, especially if you're trying to build a luxury brand, right? Like very few brands or businesses can compete on price until they have a large scale. So underpricing actually stops you from getting to that large scale. If you're trying to build a big business eventually, you need to be able to have the funds to do that. And so underpricing is the one of the biggest barriers to actually scaling up. So what you need to do is look at your margins and look at, hey, after COGS, so cost of goods sold, packaging, shipping, bank fees, platform fees, like time, labor, all of that, do you have some margin left over? Are you making money on specific products? And try to do this, because some businesses, it depends on what you're selling. Like certain products might have high margins and other products might have low margins. And so you need to figure out like, hey, for my low margin items, am I actually selling enough, large enough scale to make it worthwhile to keep these? And if not, those are obvious ones to get rid of, right? So these are, again, it ties back to number 1 is you might be selling some of those, but are you profiting off of those items? And so there's a difference between kind of points 1 and 2 here. There's a ceiling to volume-based growth. Again, there's no ceiling to value-based pricing. So you can't discount your way to a sustainable business, right? And this is a lesson that I've kind of transitioned in 2026, in that I am doing far less discounting this year, right? So really the only consistent discounting I'm doing is for new customer acquisition, right? To get customers through the door and to try my products. And even that is to get them on my email list, right? So there's still a purpose there. It's not just a discount just for new customers. I want them to sign up for email. And so that is a consistent discount I do, but I do way less sales-based events. I try to make my sales intentional and reward my valuable customers rather than just discounting my products just to discount them. So that's, again, all part of pricing. Like I said, check out the podcast on pricing. It has some really valuable information. So reason number 3, you don't have a real marketing plan. Posting on social media 3 times a week, 4 times a week, once a week, whatever, is not a marketing plan, right? That's just a schedule. That's just it's just a job. Consistency is great. So don't get me wrong. You do want to be posting consistently on social media, but consistency without a strategy is just noise. So showing up every day doesn't matter if you're not intentionally moving people through a journey. You need to map out your customer journey. This is another exercise you can dedicate some time to. You want to sit down and say, okay, here's how people discover me, right? This is kind of the acquisition phase or awareness phase. It's not even acquisition yet. It's the awareness phase. This is how people are discovering who I am, what I'm about, what I sell. And then you need to figure out acquisition. So they come to my website or they come to my store or they, are interested in fill out a lead form, right? Now I've got them a little further down the funnel. What am I doing at each one of these stages in the funnel to do some marketing, right? To, solve a problem for a customer or tell them how I'm going to solve their problem and not just say, hey, I'm selling these products, show up, right? You need to have a strategy at each one of these points in the funnel in order to actually continue to move them through the funnel. And most importantly is retention, right? So return customers. Is there a way to make sure that you're retaining your customers and reminding them that your products are great or your services are great? It might be time for them to renew their subscription. It might be time for them to replenish their stock of goods, right? you need to think about the goal with your content, right? So the things that you're producing and which part of the funnel is it addressing, which customer problem is it addressing, and have that strategy worked out, right? So you can say, hey, my emails are again for retention, right? And kind of getting people to come back to my business and think about replenishing or restocking or engaging in a conversation with me again about buying, right? So maybe my email is dedicated to that. And you can start with each piece of marketing does a different thing, right? So paid Facebook ads might be about awareness, or it might be about, if it's retargeting, it's about conversion, right? So you might want to bucket your ads separately, right? You need to think about all of these as different strategies and literally document that strategy out somewhere. So, hey, this is my marketing strategy document. Here's my customer journey and what it looks like, and here's how my content is going to address each step in the funnel. So you might not have the content to address each step in the funnel right away, and that's fine, right? You can always work on creating more content and addressing those needs, but at least have that journey mapped out and a strategy in your head first. Also, always try to build an email list, right? This is the cheapest way to generate revenue is to have an email list, but you need to work on generating that email list, and you need to maintain that email list. You also need to prune that email list, right? So not everybody on your email list is actually listening or paying attention. Hey, maybe they just signed up for that acquisition discount that I just talked about, but they're not, really engaged. They don't even buy after they sign up for that discount. How are you kind of making sure that this is called owned media, right? So email is an owned media strategy. Owned media is the best thing that you can do for return on investment, right? Whereas paid media, you're literally paying money and you're hoping you get a big enough return on that media. And then social media, you may or may not be paying for that content. But social media is a different strategy typically, right? So you need to think about each media bucket, how they work together, and how they address the customer journey. So social media is a billboard, right? Your marketing plan is actually the road that leads people to your front door. Reason number 4, you don't have a niche. Trying to sell to everyone means selling to no one, right? And we talk about this in lots of episodes, right? You can go back, especially, in podcast episode number 1 about how to build a candle business, but really that episode is about how to build any business. You need to have a niche. You need to think about a specific customer, right? And it feels counterintuitive, right? Because, hey, a broader audience leads to more sales, right? And that's what I want to do to get a larger business. But the most successful small brands are very specific. They attract loyal customers because they speak directly to that ideal customer. So who is your customer specifically? Think about demographics, psychographics, lifestyle. And then what problem are you solving, right? And for whom? Again, this is, I keep hammering home, but it really is the most important part of your business. Like pricing is great and pricing is super important. But if you don't know who you are solving a problem for and what your product or service is actually solving and how it's solving that problem and can spell it out in clear detail, then you won't have a successful business, right? A niche makes your marketing cheaper and more effective and efficient, right? So because you have a clear communication strategy or a clear message in your marketing, it will become way more cheaper over time. You know exactly where to find these people. You know who you're speaking to, and you're more likely to convert them because you are explaining clearly how your product or service is solving a problem for them. You can always expand out later, right? So this is what smart businesses do. They start super small, they start dedicated to one customer base, and then they can expand and kind of build concentric circles around there. Because as you talk to those customers and get to know those customers, you will discover opportunities to expand outside of that very narrow customer base. And so you should grow organically rather than trying to start huge and then quickly realize, hey, if I start huge, I'm spending money everywhere and I'm not seeing a return on it. And then you're going to have to niche down anyway. So the riches are in the niches, right? And the niches are where loyalty is built. I'll walk you through a super quick example of what my niche is, right? So Noble Crown, we focus on elevated minimalist fragrance customers And this is why mass market is not our target. We are focused on people who think about scent and think about wanting to expand their scent portfolio, but they want to do it in a minimalist way that blends in with their environment. So whether that is on their body, right? So think about like perfumes or body mist, or whether that's in their space in their home. So reed diffusers and candles and room sprays, right? That is who our customer is. They are a minimalist who is focused on elevating their space, whether it's personal or literally their physical space. So that's just an example of my niche, right? And who I'm talking to and who I am providing a service for. But think about it the same way for you. And this should be, you can have multiple levels of this, right? So you can have a 20-page document on who your ideal customer is and what niche you're serving, but you can also boil it down to one sentence. So I challenge you to focus on that one sentence version, because that's often the hardest one to do, and it can take a while. It can take weeks to figure this out, but you should have some inkling, right? If you've already started your business or you're about to start your business, you have some inkling about who you are providing a product or service for, and I challenge you to identify that niche and literally write it down. All right, and reason number 5, you don't have a brand identity, right? So a logo is not a brand, a color palette is not a brand. A brand is actually a feeling. A brand is, hey, when I see Noble Crown, I know what they're selling, and I know whether or not it's for me, right? So if someone lands on your Instagram page or your website or sees your packaging, do they immediately understand who you are and what you stand for? If the answer is maybe, or, I'm not sure, or no, then you have some work to do, right? So brand identity is your values, your voice, your visual language, your promise to the customer. I want you to write all of this stuff down. There's no better task, or there's no better way to like clarify all of this information than to actually document it. So you might know all of this stuff, you might have it in your brain, but if you don't physically write it out, or I should say, type it up, then you can lose it, or you can be very unclear, or when you need to go and build your marketing, you're not thinking about all of those points that are sitting in your head. I'd rather you have a brand document, right? So a brand tone document. And this is something that I did last year for the business. Is I already had documents on who my ideal customers were, but then I wanted to build a brand tone document, right? And one thing that I do when I create marketing of any sort, whether that's a video for Instagram or an email or a paid advertisement, is I go back to that brand tone and I link and make sure that everything that I create is going to that brand tone. And then same thing with like packaging, right? So when I come to packaging, I am always, and I like to design packaging. It's one of my favorite things to do. I always think back to not what I want, but what does my customer want? What does my brand tone or brand identity say, right? And that quickly whittles down options, right? So I can, I'm creative. I like to think about a lot of different art styles and a lot of different directions. But when I focus back on who I'm working for, who I'm selling a product for, then and what my brand identity is, it quickly whittles things down. And so then I can go from there for options, and I don't get bogged down in having too many creative options. So also it drives consistency. We have a previous episode in the podcast that talks about how to create a luxury brand. And one of the biggest things in luxury is consistency across all touch points. So whether that's online, the physical product, the packaging, the store experience, whatever it is, right? Consistency says, hey, I know what this brand stands for, or at least I know what this brand looks like. And, if you are, a little bit older, then you have seen a lot of marketing for products all over the world, and you can identify companies by their logos or their color palette. That's because they're consistent with it. So customers don't just buy products, they buy into a feeling, a story. And part of that story is a consistent brand, a consistent look and feel. And you telling that story, right? They may not know that story when they first meet you, but if you're telling it consistently and really talking them through it and showing them, then they will understand what that story is. And a strong brand identity is what allows you to charge premium prices and build repeat customers. So again, going back to our retention and thinking about that strategy, but then also about pricing, all of this works together. You're not just selling a product, you're selling a worldview. So make sure yours is very clear. So the good news is that none of these reasons require a bigger budget or more followers. They require clarity and intention, right? So I go back to the idea of writing this stuff down, having it documented. Also, you want this documented because as you grow, as you bring new people onto your team, you need to also educate them on this, right? That you need to have training on, hey, here's what the brand stands for, here's what it's about. And they need to buy into that mission and that goal and those values. And so if you have it documented, it's a lot easier to explain to someone clearly through writing than to hope to remember all of the things that are bouncing around in your head, right? So let's recap the 5 reasons your small business might be staying small. It's number 1, not listening to your sales data. Number 2, not pricing for growth. Number 3, not having a real marketing plan. Number 4, not having a niche. And number 5, not having a brand identity. So what I want you to do, your homework for the week, is to pick one of those things, just one, just start with one and start there and document it and solve that one issue. And then you each week, so for the next 5 weeks, I want you to take one of these things and, maybe the marketing plan might take a little longer than 1 week, right? But the other things, each one is about a week. Start with one per week, flesh them out in greater detail, and go from there. And I promise you, it will help you grow. It may not be instantaneous, right? Like we can't all have viral businesses that, take off to the moon within a week. But I promise you, it will help you grow and unblock you from being a small business and staying as a entirely small business. You will grow in at least one of these aspects. So in the comments below, let me know which of the 5 that you're going to pick this week. I want to hear what you're going to do to address one of those 5. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. It helps spread the joy of fragrance and supports fellow entrepreneurs. If you'd like to explore any of the fragrance products that I create, you can always visit noblecrown.shop. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode.